The Charleston County Auditor's Office is getting ready to send out their annual tax bills. Today, I talk one-on-one with Charleston County Auditor Peter Tecklenburg to see what your bill will look like for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Charleston County Auditor Peter Tecklenburg, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Good to be here.
Yes, sir. I know that I spooked you right in July, right after I came back from Nashville. And I know we talked a whole lot about growth and obviously taxes and, tax rolls and other issues. I know that when we spoke in July, we left off basically talking about how many people have actually moved to Charleston since, the growth of Charleston began. And let me ask you, how many people have moved to Charleston since this past summer, according to your office?
Well, the way we track a lot of the growth is through cars being registered and homes being purchased, and so it's probably not as technical as a lot of folks would do. It's not a census track or a census by any means, but what we've seen in the last year is about $100 million in new property or in increased value in our assessment base in Charleston. Our assessment base is about $4.8 billion, and that's up from about $4.67 last year. And just to give you sort of an idea of where that all fits in, Greenville, which is the second highest, is at about 2.5, which means you can almost get two values of Greenville in one Charleston or 3 Richland counties. That shows you how big our tax base is in Charleston. And that comes from being near the coast. We have a good mix of industry here in different types of things. I'll tell you, there's apartment buildings and hotels bring in a lot of bring up the assessment base a lot. And we have a lot of folks who have cars here. We have about 200,000 pieces of real property, which are the bills I'm about to send out.
Right.
About 400,000 cars in Charleston, and just about 50,000 boats when you include the motors. So we got a lot of stuff to tax here, and that's where why our assessment base is growing by about $100 million in the last year.
So this might be a silly question, but when did the increased value happen here in Charleston County?
Well, the value happens throughout the year. We don't have a reassessment for a couple more years. And so when we see $100 million in new assessments added, that's not because of a reassessment. That's not the folks who've lived here for a while, us seeing a change in their value. We know that property values are going up, but we're not even capturing that right now. And what we see is throughout the year, that when people move here and register their cars, when people buy new cars that are more expensive than the previous car, if you had a home that was worth $500,000 and it sold for $600,000, we will be able to see that $100,000 in gain. But for the folks who lived here and have lived here for a while, since it is not a reassessment year, and since we don't have a reassessment for a few years, all of that $100 million is not taking into account any rise in property values for people who already live here. We know the market, and we know people's property values are higher. When we capture that value is only when a property is sold or when something new is added to the books. So it's a little bit of a combination of both for the $100 million.
So what has been added to the books as far as relatively new things?
A number of apartment buildings, or a couple of apartment buildings, a couple hotels. Those are the ones you'd notice the most. But the bulk of our increase really is coming from properties that are changing hands, and again, it's that gain in value that we're going to see in terms of ultimately on the assessment rolls.
And where will that gain be in the next 2-3 years?
Well, I think if you look at the construction that's going on, there are a lot of things that are sort of in the pipeline, and it usually takes a few years for them to sort of catch up.
Mm.
If someone was to open their doors today, we're not going to pick them up until next year, until next October. And so we're sort of behind because we pay, taxes for real estate are paid in arrears. And so I think the trend we've seen will continue for the next few years, certainly until the next reassessment. And I think while home sales are slowing down, there's still a lot of demand to be here, and so the values are high. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next reassessment. But I think in a lot of ways, Charleston is one of these areas, and the whole Low Country, where these values are pretty secure.
And where exactly are the home values slowing down here in the Low Country?
Well, we haven't. I've seen anecdotal stuff. I mean, we were seeing really high sales, like record numbers in Sullivan's Island, Kiowa, places like that. And I've heard it's slowing down a little bit. But in general, I think if Charleston's matching any of the national trends, we're probably going to see some of the slowdowns more in some of the more residential areas, places that are more affordable. Just because with interest rates going up and stuff like that, I think the places where the homes are selling the most, maybe some parts of West Ashley, some parts of Mount Pleasant, that may be impacted more by interest rates than places like Sullivan's Island or Isle of Palms when you're talking about multi-million-dollar homes for some of the homes.
Yeah. And let me ask you this too, Peter. What other trends are is your office looking at right now, I should say?
Well, I think the stuff we're looking at, I'll start by saying that the reason why governments tax property is because it's a consistent and stable way of raising revenue. And I think that's something we've seen in Charleston over our history. And so, we're looking at new growth. We're looking at what impacts some of the new industries and spinoffs from Boeing and Mercedes and even in Volvo, which of course is in Berkeley County, are having in Charleston. It's definitely something we're looking at. We're looking at the multifamily housing, apartment buildings and condos that are being constructed. But I think what we're really focused on is trying to move my office and move Charleston County sort of into the future. And that's one of the reasons, or one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is I've always said that the government's really far behind when it comes to the private sector. And so when we look at things that banks and cable companies and phone companies and stuff like that have been doing, the government's usually on the tail end of that, whether it's, we added a chat function to our website a few years ago. They've been doing that for years with Verizon and with SD&G or with Dominion. If you have a question, you do a chat box. We've focused on trying to put as much stuff online as we can. People don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to come in person. They want to get as much done as they can without having to talk to somebody. And one of the big things that the private sector has been doing for a long time is trying to get out of the paper bill business. In fact, almost all the bills I get come via email. My power bill, my cable bill, my phone bill, my insurance bills. And that's been a trend going forward. I think there are a lot of, especially younger folks who they sign up for something and they're not expecting a paper bill. Well, like I said, the government's usually behind on things like this. So we've been really working on trying to get an e-bill process going. And it is live on our website. This is our first year. We're really going to push it. In fact, you're one of the first persons I've talked to about it. If you go to charlestoncounty.org or auditor.charlestoncounty.org, you can see it and sign up. And you'll get a paper bill this year. We've had a few hundred people sign up so far with our sort of soft launch without telling people about it. And just like any other bill, you'll get an email with a PDF attachment of your bill, which you can pay online, of course, or you can print out and send in, or you can just send a check. But a lot of folks, they don't want to get paper bills anymore. They're used to getting the electronic ones. We send a copy for folks who have mortgages with escrow. We send a electronic bill to and we have for years, to the mortgage company, and then the homeowner will get a copy of the bill as a courtesy. A lot of those folks would rather just get it in email. And not only that, but of course it saves us money, saves the county a lot of money. We've been doing this for a number of years for our foreign residents. We have a number of foreign residents who have tax bills that are sent to Germany or Japan or England or Latvia, you name it. We send these tax bills out. And as a courtesy to them, we've been sending them via email because it's much more dependable than putting something in the mail and waiting for it to go overseas. So we've expanded upon that. Our goal, and in the next year, we're really going to start pushing to get people to sign up for it. Our goal is we're starting with real property, which is real estate, homes and land. About 200,000 of those properties. Our goal is in the next few years to get that down to maybe 100,000, signed up. And we'll move on to cars and we'll move on to boats. The bottom line is we're going to save some paper. We're going to save a lot of postage, and it's going to make it much more efficient for my staff. Every time we get mail returned to us, we go through it and we try to track down the owner. We catalog it so we can keep track of who's getting their mail and who's not. And when you send out 700,000 pieces of mail, like my office does, even if 1% gets returned to us, that's a lot of mail for my staff to go through. So whatever we can do to make that easier is something that we've been focusing on, and we're really happy to be rolling it out, and we're going to start really pushing it the next year to try to get people to sign up. And if you don't want to sign up for it, you can still get it by paper. We're not forcing anyone to do it, but we're trying to bring Charleston County into the future and be more consistent with how other people receive their bills.
Now, how many e-bills have you sent to mortgage companies, and how many e-bills have you actually sent to the actual homeowner?
Well, this is our first year really sending them to the homeowner. We have always sent an electronic file to the mortgage company, so it's all in one document. I think there are less people who have mortgages than you think. I always feel like more people have them, but I don't know. I think about 40,000 bills each year get sent to the mortgage company. So out of 200,000, about 40,000 are escrowed. And again, we're sending that to the mortgage company via an electronic basis. But then we also send a written or a paper bill to those 40,000 people, just letting you know, here's a copy of your bill. This is how it breaks down. Your mortgage company is going to pay it for you because you escrow, but here's a copy. Well, that's a lot of mail and a lot of postage, and postage is getting more expensive, even though we use bulk rate. Paper is not cheaper. And so anything we can do to save money and move Charleston County in the right direction, we will. Charleston County has grown a lot over the last, say, 10 years. And I'm proud that my office hasn't grown in terms of our budget or our staff. Our mail budget has gone up a little bit because we send more mail. But we have the same amount of staff members as we have since I came on. And Charleston County has grown a lot. So we've had to find ways to be more efficient. And I think this is one of those ways. If I can free up some time from my staff having to go through return mail and trying to track down people who moved and didn't tell us, it's going to make more time for my office to focus on some of the more technical things that we're trying to do.
And how many of those people, how many of those residents that you all have to track down so far to get their attention as far as e-bills and tax bills in general?
Well, we're gonna start letting people know that there's this option when they get the paper bill. We'd already reached out to a lot of the foreign folks, and because that continued to be a problem for us. It's hard for us to we track our mail, but it's hard to track. We don't track foreign mail. It's hard to track foreign mail. It's more expensive. you don't, sometimes something will arrive overseas in 3 or 4 days. Sometimes it may take, over a month or longer, depending on where it's trying to go and sit in different parts of the mail stream in multiple different countries over time. So, the I guess the general idea is to get as many of these folks on. We're starting with the real property, and our hopes is that we can move to boats and then cars, which are a little more difficult. Not only are there more cars, but people sell and sell their cars more often. They change their addresses and don't exactly let us know. We probably have more return mail on cars than we do real estate, which makes sense. Most people aren't moving homes a lot, but if you move from apartment to apartment, a lot of times people will just keep the driver's license address the same. And guess what? That's where we send our bill to. So we spend a lot of time tracking people down on the motor vehicle bills.
Wow. So, how many bills have you sent out thus far? Because I know Saturday will be October 1st.
Well, no bills have hit the stream yet. They'll all be online. Hopefully, without any hurricane interruptions, they'll all be online by Monday. October 1st or 2nd, we'll have those available online, and it'll be about another week before they start hitting mailboxes. We get them to the print vendor, we're hoping to get them to the print vendor by the end of this week, and then they'll print them and put them in the mail, and they'll start arriving when we print out as many tax bills as we do. It takes a few days for them all to hit the stream, but the good news are for the folks who are eager, they'll be able to find their bill early next week online. And I will say that generally speaking, there shouldn't be too many changes to the taxes this year. Really, school district is going up some, but they're going up on their operations, which means that the folks who live in owner-occupied homes, people who have 4% assessment ratio, won't see a change in that. None of the major jurisdictions are really raising their taxes. And so I think most folks will see a bill that's very similar to last year. Most folks' values haven't changed any because we haven't done a reassessment. And so I think what most folks can expect is a similar bill to last year. If you are in a 6% property, if you own an investment property, if you own some land or something like that classifies at 6%, you may see a small increase, just mostly based on the school district going up a little bit.
And what is the district's revenue from tax collections?
Oh, goodness. Offhand, I want to say it's around $200 million. They have a lot of revenue sources. And I'm supposed to be meeting with them. And if I'd already met with them, I'd remember exactly what is coming in. They get money from the state. They get money from a lot of other sources. The property taxes that Charleston County provides through the billing does not make up the majority of their funding. They have federal funding, state funding, and reimbursements from the 1 penny that goes towards education. But it's a significant amount, and I think there was some time where Charleston County School District was having a little more financial troubles. It's a growing district; it's getting more expensive. Of course, they can explain all that, but they're in very good financial and solid financial footing right now.
And what was that reimbursement for the 1% penny tax?
It's supposed to reimburse the school district for revenue they lose because the fact of in Act 388, the school districts don't receive operating funding from people who have 4% properties. It has been debatable about how much of that money has truly been has made it back to Charleston County in terms of whether it's a full match or not. In fact, most years it hasn't been. And when now it's over 10 years ago, but when we went through a minor recession and people stopped buying things as much, and so those 1 pennies weren't being added up the way that they anticipated. The school district took a really big hit on that. Of course, the last few years, people have been spending a lot of money. That 1 penny's been producing a lot more revenue, and so the school districts across the state have benefited from a stronger economy, even with inflation and other things. People are spending a lot of money in South Carolina.
And when you go back to that full match, how many years was that for the Charleston County School District?
How many years was on the penny?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's been going on since 388, which was what, just prior to, I guess, 2008 or sometime around that.
Yeah.
I'm losing track of how long it's been there, but it's that was a referendum that added a lot of changes to property taxes, and some of those have we've been able to see over the years what has been real beneficial and what some of the things that may have caused some unintended consequences. But one of the things that has come out of that, and one of the things that for the majority of the residents in Charleston County and through the state, is probably added a little more predictability in what their taxes are going to be. There's their tax caps, their millage rate limitations. There are freezes the values better. There was already some legislation on that, but the whole idea, and I think something that everyone is supportive is we don't want folks to get taxed out of their homes, and so that's what a lot of the aspects of 388 did, was put some stability in for folks who lived in their homes, and something that's not connected to 388 but goes on the same channels of trying to keep people in the home is the homestead exemption, which is something my office does. That's still only at $50,000. There's been some legislation to try to get it up to 75 or 100, but it hasn't passed through the House or the Senate yet.
Right.
So if you're over the age of 65, if you're legally blind, or if you're disabled, we can take $50,000 off the value of your home for tax purposes. And that's something that my office has been working really hard on. It's a big savings. We still go out to community groups and libraries. In fact, going to a library later this week in or a senior center later this week in North Charleston. We were at a senior center on the other side of North Charleston last week, and have been going to a lot of libraries. We're trying to reach out to folks. But if you're over the age of 65 and you are living in a home that you or your spouse owns, please reach out to the auditor in your county, whether it's in Charleston, Berkeley, or Dorchester, and ensure you're getting your homestead exemption, because it is something you have to apply for. You can do it online in Charleston County. You can just scan a picture with your cell phone of your driver's license, so we can make sure you're over the age of 65, and we can get that taken off your bill. And it's not too late. It's probably too late for us to get it on the bill this year, but we'll refund you or change the bill as long as we get it done before the tax deadline, which is January 15th. We will happy to refund you and fix your bill. So if you're over the age of 65 and you don't have your homestead exemption, make sure to call my office or go online.
Online, yes, sir. And going back to that tax cap, what is that for Charleston County?
Well, the cap. Well, there's a cap that is on reassessment, which is 15% in every 5 years, which means your home can't go up more than 15% as long as you don't sell it or add an extension to it or something. But your home can't go up more than 15% every 5 years in terms of how we value things. And so it's not uncommon for someone to have a house that they could sell for $1 million on the market, but for tax purposes, we may have it for $600,000 or $500,000 even, because we do not keep up with where the market is. We're limited to 15% every 5 years. The other thing is there's a millage cap, which means it limits the city of Charleston, the school district. It limits municipalities from raising taxes a certain amount, and the amount that they can raise is the CPI, Consumer Price Index, mixed with population growth, and the state will send down that factor each year. And now I will say this: in Charleston, we've seen growth, and we've also seen the Consumer Price Index go up. So it gives the municipalities the ability to raise their millage rate, but usually only a few percent at a time. It's usually 3 or 4%, and they don't have to use it all. Sometimes they can sort of pass it along, and I think what this causes or keeps municipalities from being able to do is really raise taxes overnight. You can't raise taxes 20% overnight, even if sometimes if there's really good reasons. Natural disasters is one of the exceptions, a couple others. But even if the municipality decided that they wanted to, double the size of their police, they are not going to be able to do that without probably some sort of referendum, because the limit on how much they can raise taxes is going to be into effect. This millage cap. So there are some limitations on the municipalities. Because we're in a growing economy in a growing state, it has given these authorities the ability to raise taxes slowly, and a lot of them have done that year after year in small incremental basis. But the ability to do these giant tax increases have really been limited because of 388 and because of these millage caps. There are some exceptions. Like I said, natural disaster, there's some ones that would be very difficult to apply in Charleston, but in some of the rural counties they may happen. I think if you lose your largest employer, you have something that has a major impact on your assessment base. You can do it. I mean, you can imagine if Boeing, for instance, was in Williamsburg County, and then all of a sudden Boeing decided to leave, it would change everything there, and so it would give them the ability to do that. But in Charleston, even large changes aren't going to impact. We have such a diverse and large tax base; it'd be very difficult for some of these other exceptions to come in. The biggest one is natural disasters, and that makes sense. If something happens and the municipality has to increase their spending for cleanup and other sort of public uses, they're going to need the ability to do that.
And I would love to ask Superintendent Don Kennedy a lot of questions about this, but they won't let me. But let me ask you, what is that student price index that your office is currently seeing?
Repeat that again. I'm sorry. The price per student, you mean?
Yes, sir. Exactly right.
I've read the information. We don't calculate it, so I don't know. And you're right. The school district would be better at answering that. I will say this.
Yes, sir.
Our superintendent Kennedy was the finance director for the Charleston County, and my office works very closely with the Charleston County School District finance office. And so I've worked with Don Kennedy for years, and I'll tell you, there's not anyone who's more financially astute in a superintendent's office in the state. That's for sure. He knows everything about the dollars and cents, and I think if people's concerns about the school district are financial, then I will tell you, I think Don Kennedy is about as qualified and probably, I don't think anyone in the state would hold a candle to him. He is. He knows the finances, which is important because they spend a lot of money there, and it's an expensive operation with the dozens of schools and thousands of employees and tens of thousands of students. So I will say this: we take a pretty close look at the finances of the school district. We were asked by the legislature to do that years ago when they ran into some tax issues, property tax issues, and so we meet with them regularly, and they are in a very good standing right now.
And let me ask you this: who performs the outside audits obviously your office, and what do they charge? And is that not a requirement?
Yeah, we have the Charleston County has an internal auditor which would do audits of my office, and they happen. We had one a year or two ago, and there were no findings. We had one a few years before that. We get it every few years, and if there's a need for it, they will hire an outside auditor. Usually, if they're going to do that only if there's some sort of need for it. But we do. We have an independent auditor who comes by every few years. There was an audit recently of another department, and that crossed over into ours, and so we were working with them last year. But just every couple of years, we have an audit. They check the stuff you want to check to make sure that we're not taxing people unfairly or giving people breaks that they shouldn't get. So we go through everything. Anytime we need to correct a bill, and if there was a mistake, we note why we made a mistake and why we fixed it. And it's usually very simple. Maybe we had the wrong type of boat. We create a bill, we send it out, and someone corrects it for us, and the bill may go from $40,000 to $20,000. Well, we need to have some rationale for why we just changed the bill by $20,000. And so we have the auditor look at all that information, and also, of course, your standard governmental accounting stuff to make sure we're spending the money right. We have a balanced budget every year we've been here, and we live within our means here, and even in a growing county, we try to do more with less.
And let me ask you, as far as the Charleston County School District, who performs an outside audit for them?
Well, I think they hire. I don't know who they're currently contracted with, but they would go out for a bid and hire an outside auditor. And I don't know who the current outside auditor is.
Now, do you foresee another windfall in collections from foreclosures?
No, that's a good question. I will tell you, and I tell other folks, we are in the business of taxing and collecting what we anticipate. I'm not in the penalty business. I don't want to be in the penalty business. The reason they have penalties is because most people wouldn't pay on time, probably including myself. If I knew I would be late, then and not be penalized, it would make it a little more difficult. My goal is to have everyone pay what they're supposed to pay. When we talk to the municipalities, or the Sullivan's Island or the school district, they tell us how much money they need based on the millage. We tell them how much we can collect, and that's what we're anticipating. When someone doesn't pay, that changes that formula a little bit, but hopefully they do pay. We would love for delinquent tax office to not have a job. I don't mean that in any negative way, other than the fact that I just want everyone to pay, and we don't have to deal with that. So in terms of windfall, we don't see a windfall unless there's some penalties. We are at almost an all-time low when it comes to people being delinquent, whether that be on, especially on real estate. That our last tax sale, I think, was one of the smallest tax sales they've ever had in terms of selling a property. Generally speaking, I know inflation is a big concern, but folks in the last few years have had an easier time paying their taxes, and so we've had less go delinquent.
And Zoom is giving less than a minute, but for tax bills, you go to auditor.charleston.county.org. Auditor Peter Tecklenburg, thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups once again.
Yeah, Quintin, thank you for as always. Always appreciate talking with you, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.